The frigid air of Sector 12B pierced through Trevor's standard-issue Xenogenesis uniform. His breath formed visible puffs of condensation as he navigated the unmarked metal corridor, its blue-tinted lights casting eerie shadows against the titanium walls. The temperature reading on his wrist display showed -2 degrees Celsius, optimal for biological sample preservation, unbearable for human comfort. Strange, Trevor muttered to himself, checking his assignment tablet again. 3 years as a life support systems engineer at Xenogenesis Corporation had familiarized him with nearly every maintenance shaft and laboratory within the towering facility on Ares 7. Yet somehow, this particular corridor wasn't displayed on any of the facility maps he'd studied. His personal communicator had awakened him at 0500 hours that Sunday morning with the automated message, "Engineer Trevor Grant, proceed to Sector 12B for routine maintenance check. Authorization, executive level." The facility was unusually quiet, most staff enjoying their weekend rotation off, leaving only essential personnel and security. Trevor approached the unmarked door at the end of the corridor. A biometric scanner glowed red beside it, waiting. Out of habit, he pressed his palm against it, expecting rejection. To his surprise, the scanner flashed green, and the heavy metal door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. "Access granted, Engineer Grant, Trevor, Life Support Division," announced the clinical female voice of the facility's AI. The chamber beyond was unlike anything he'd seen in the facility. At its center stood a cylindrical glass containment chamber, surrounded by a complex array of monitoring equipment and data terminals. The glass was frosted over in places, but Trevor could make out a figure inside, a humanoid silhouette suspended in the center of the chamber. He approached cautiously, his engineer's curiosity overriding his growing sense of unease. As he neared the glass, the frost began to dissipate, revealing what, or rather who, was inside. A young woman with vibrant red skin and snow-white hair floated in a clear preservation fluid. Her wrists and ankles were bound by metallic restraints connected to the chamber's interior. Her eyes were closed, giving her the appearance of peaceful sleep. But the monitoring equipment told a different story. Her brain activity was extraordinarily high. Trevor's breath caught in his throat. Xenogenesis Corporation was known throughout the galaxy for its pioneering work in rare DNA harvesting. But he'd never imagined they were keeping sentient beings captive. As if sensing his presence, the woman's eyes snapped open, brilliant sapphire blue, startling against her crimson skin. Her gaze locked with Trevor's, and suddenly, a voice echoed inside his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "Open the door, human! Free me!" Trevor stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a power cable. The voice in his head was feminine, desperate, and unmistakably not his own thought. "Open the door," the voice pleaded again. "Before they return, before they extract more of me." Trevor's hands trembled as he approached the nearest terminal. His security clearance shouldn't allow him to interface with containment protocols. He was just a systems engineer, not a research scientist. Yet something compelled him to try. His fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, bypassing security protocols that seemed strangely accessible to him. Warning symbols flashed across the screen. "Caution, Subject Leia X7 containment. Deactivation initiated. Executive override required." Trevor hesitated, his finger hovering over the final confirmation. If he proceeded, he would violate every security protocol in his contract. His career would be over. He might even face criminal charges for interfering with company assets. The woman's eyes remained fixed on him, pleading silently now. A single tear escaped, floating upward in the preservation fluid. In that moment, Trevor made his choice. He pressed the confirmation button. A series of mechanical clicks echoed through the chamber as the containment system began its shutdown sequence. The preservation fluid drained through vents in the floor of the cylinder. The restraints retracted into the walls. Finally, The glass cylinder itself began to rise, exposing the woman to the cold air of the laboratory. She collapsed forward, her legs weak from disuse. Trevor rushed to catch her before she hit the floor, surprised by how light she felt in his arms despite her human-like size. "Thank you," she whispered, this time with her actual voice, slightly raspy from lack of use, but melodic and clear. Before Trevor could respond, blaring alarms erupted throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began to pulse, bathing the laboratory in crimson flashes. "Security breach in Sector 12B. All personnel initiate containment protocol. This is not a drill." "We need to move," Trevor said urgently, helping the woman to her feet. "Can you walk?" She nodded, steadying herself against him. "My name is Leia," she said, "and they will kill us both if they find us." "I'm Trevor," he replied, guiding her toward the exit. "And I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing." "You're doing what's right," she said, her blue eyes flashing with determination. "That's enough." They moved through the doorway into the corridor beyond, Trevor's mind racing to formulate an escape plan. The facility's security systems would be tracking them already. Standard procedure would have locked down all main exits. Their only hope was to reach the maintenance docks where supply shuttles arrived and departed. As they hurried down the corridor, Trevor activated his engineering override on his wrist device, triggering the emergency fire suppression system. Dense, white fog began to fill the corridors, obscuring surveillance cameras and confusing the security teams that would be converging on their position. "They'll have Vexers," Leia whispered urgently as they pressed against a wall, catching their breath. "What are Vexers?" Trevor asked, peering cautiously around a corner. His question was answered by an inhuman shriek from somewhere in the fog ahead. A metallic, fluid-like creature rounded the corner, its form constantly shifting and reforming. A mass of liquid silver with a vaguely humanoid shape and no discernible face. "That's a Vexer," Leia said, her voice tight with fear. "They're designed to track and capture biological specimens. They're especially attracted to rare DNA signatures. Like mine." The Vexer paused, its formless head turning in their direction. It had no visible sensory organs, yet Trevor could feel it scanning, sensing. "It's detecting my pheromones," Leia whispered. "I need you to distract it while I—" She closed her eyes in concentration. The Vexer suddenly convulsed, its silvery form rippling as if experiencing an electrical shock. It emitted another shriek, this one sounding confused, almost pained. Then it slithered away down a different corridor, moving erratically. "What did you do?" Trevor asked, amazed. "A simple confusion of sensory input," Leia explained, already pulling him forward. "My species has limited telepathic abilities. We can project emotions, sensations. I made it think my scent was coming from multiple directions." They continued through the labyrinthine corridors of the facility, Trevor guiding them toward the maintenance bays while Leia used her abilities to confuse any security personnel they encountered. Guards would suddenly stop, look around in confusion, or simply collapse to the floor unconscious when Leia focused her telepathic abilities on them. "I'm the last of my kind," she explained, as they huddled in an empty storage closet, waiting for a patrol to pass. "At least, the last freeborn. Xenogenesis harvested DNA samples from my planet before it was completely strip-mined for resources by the Galactic Mining Consortium. They've been using my genetic material to try to recreate my species' telepathic abilities in other life forms." "That's why they kept you alive," Trevor realized. "Fresh samples." Leia nodded grimly. "My cells regenerate at a remarkable rate. They've been harvesting tissue samples for years. I've lost count of how many operations I've endured." Trevor felt sick. He'd always known Xenogenesis Corporation operated in morally gray areas. All the major interplanetary corporations did. But this went beyond unethical. This was monstrous. "We need to get you off this planet," he said decisively. "I know some people who might help us. There's a resistance network. People who've been monitoring Xenogenesis and other corporations like it. They operate from a hidden station on Lyra 9's moon. The Nexus? Leia asked, surprising him with her knowledge. You know about it. I've touched the minds of many Xenogenesis employees over the years, she explained. I've gathered fragments of information, piecing together knowledge of the outside world. The Nexus station is mentioned in whispers, feared by corporate executives. Trevor nodded. Then that's where we'll go. But first, we need to reach the maintenance bay and secure a shuttle. They moved through the facility with increasing urgency as more alarms joined the cacophony. Security protocols were escalating. Soon, the entire facility would be locked down completely. They finally reached the maintenance bay, a vast hangar where cargo shuttles and repair vessels were docked. Trevor spotted what they needed: a small, Hermes-class courier ship, used for transporting sensitive documents and small packages between Xenogenesis facilities. Perfect, he muttered. Small, fast, and equipped with basic stealth capabilities. As they approached the shuttle, a security team rounded the corner of the hangar, weapons drawn. "Halt!" the lead officer shouted. "Step away from the alien specimen and place your hands above your head." Trevor froze, calculating their chances. 5 armed guards against an engineer and a weakened telepathic alien. Not good odds. Leia stepped forward, her blue eyes intensifying in color until they seemed to glow. "Sleep," she commanded, her voice resonating with strange harmonics. 4 of the guards immediately collapsed to the floor. The 5th, wearing some kind of neural dampening device, raised his weapon. But Trevor was already moving. Years of maintenance work had built surprising strength in his arms. He tackled the guard before he could fire, wrestling the weapon away and striking him with its butt. The guard joined his companions on the floor. "That was impressive," Trevor said, helping Leia toward the shuttle. "Both your part and, if I may say, mine." A ghost of a smile crossed Leia's face, the first Trevor had seen. "You move well for a maintenance engineer." "Life support systems engineering requires access to some dangerous areas," he explained, activating the shuttle's entry ramp. "They make us take basic combat training." Once inside the shuttle, Trevor quickly initiated the launch sequence while Leia collapsed into the co-pilot seat, clearly exhausted from her telepathic exertions. "The neural dampening device that guard was wearing," Trevor said as he worked. "Will we encounter more of those?" "Likely," Leia confirmed. "They were developed specifically to counter my abilities after I managed to influence a research assistant to loosen my restraints years ago." Her expression darkened. She was terminated for the security breach. Trevor felt another wave of revulsion at Xenogenesis's methods. "We'll need to be careful then." The shuttle's engines hummed to life just as a facility-wide announcement echoed through the hangar. "Attention, all security personnel. Initiate maximum containment protocol. Subject, Leia X7 must be recovered intact. Engineer Grant may be terminated if necessary." "That's our cue to leave," Trevor said grimly, engaging the shuttle's thrusters. The small vessel lifted off the hangar floor and shot toward the open bay doors. Weapon fire from newly arrived security personnel bounced harmlessly off the shuttle's reinforced hull as they accelerated into the rust-colored sky of RE-7. As they broke atmosphere and entered the blackness of space, Trevor finally allowed himself a moment to process what he'd done. In the span of an hour, he'd gone from a loyal Xenogenesis employee to a fugitive aiding the escape of what the corporation considered its property. He glanced at Leia, who was gazing out at the stars with wonder in her eyes. "How long were you in that chamber?" he asked softly. "I was captured when I was still a child," she replied, not taking her eyes off the stars. 14 standard years, 7 months, and 22 days ago. By my calculation." "You've been counting?" "Every moment," she confirmed, finally turning to look at him. "Until today." Trevor felt a surge of protectiveness toward this strange, resilient being. "We'll get you somewhere safe," he promised, And then, we'll make Xenogenesis pay for what they did to you and your people." "My people are gone," Leia said, a deep sadness in her voice. "I am the last." "Then we'll make sure their memory lives on through you," Trevor replied. "And we'll ensure that what happened to them never happens to anyone else." Leia's hand, five-fingered like a human's, but with slightly elongated joints, reached out hesitantly to touch his arm. "Thank you, Trevor, not just for freeing me, but for seeing me as a person, not a specimen." The moment was interrupted by the shuttle's proximity alarm. Trevor checked the scanner and cursed under his breath. "Xenogenesis security vessel," he reported. "Heavy cruiser class. They've deployed pursuit craft. We can't outrun them in this shuttle." Leia's expression hardened with determination. "Then we don't run, we hide." She guided Trevor to adjust their course toward a nearby asteroid field, the remnants of a shattered moon that had once orbited Ares 7. Within the chaotic tumble of space rocks, they powered down all non-essential systems and drifted, watching tensely as the Xenogenesis vessels searched the perimeter of the field. "They won't risk their larger ships in here," Trevor observed, "but they might send in smaller craft or drones." "If they do, I can confuse their sensors," Leia offered. "But not for long. My strength isn't fully recovered." They sat in the dimly lit cockpit, the only illumination coming from the emergency power indicators and the distant stars visible through the viewport. Despite the danger, Trevor found himself studying Leia with fascination. Her crimson skin seemed to have subtle patterns, almost like fingerprints, that shifted slightly with her breathing. Her white hair floated around her face in the zero-gravity environment, giving her an ethereal appearance. "Your world," Trevor began cautiously. "What was it like?" A smile of remembrance softened Leia's features. "Beautiful. The skies were amber, not blue like Earth's or rust-red like Ares 7. Our cities were built in harmony with the natural formations, spiraling towers that grew alongside the crystalline mountains." Her expression darkened. "Then the mining corporations came. They promised partnership, technological exchange. Instead, they extracted our world's resources until nothing remained but a hollow shell." "I'm sorry," Trevor said, genuinely pained by her loss. "My people didn't fight back enough," Leia continued. "We were pacifists by nature, telepathically connected to one another and our environment. We couldn't comprehend the level of destruction until it was too late." Her blue eyes met his. "That's why what you did today matters so much, Trevor. You chose to act when you saw injustice. My people waited too long." Their conversation was interrupted by the shuttle's scanner detecting movement nearby. "Probe," Trevor whispered, checking the readout. "Unmanned, but equipped with biosensors. It'll detect us if it gets much closer." Leia closed her eyes, concentrating. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead as she extended her telepathic influence toward the approaching probe. The small device suddenly veered away, as if confused, and continued in a different direction. "It worked," Trevor breathed in relief. "For now," Leia said, clearly drained by the effort. "But we can't stay here forever. We need to reach your Nexus station." Trevor calculated their options. The Xenogenesis security vessels were still patrolling the space around the asteroid field, but their search pattern was becoming predictable. If they timed it right, they could slip out during a gap in the coverage and make a run for the jump point that would take them toward Lyra 9. After 3 tense hours of waiting, their opportunity came. Trevor powered up the shuttle systems and navigated carefully through the asteroid field. As they emerged, he immediately engaged the faster-than-light drive, and the stars stretched into lines around them as they jumped away from Ares 7. The small cabin of the Hermes-class shuttle wasn't designed for comfort during long journeys. With only 2 reclinable seats and a tiny refresher unit, they would be in close quarters for the 3-day journey to Lyra 9. As Trevor set the autopilot, and checked their trajectory. Leia explored the shuttle with childlike curiosity, examining the various controls and compartments. Her movements were becoming steadier as her strength returned. "Human technology is so physical," she observed. "My people interfaced with our technology telepathically. No buttons or switches needed." "That sounds convenient," Trevor replied, "though I imagine it would be hard for visitors to use." Leia laughed, a melodious sound that seemed to brighten the sterile shuttle interior. "We had adapted interfaces for non-telepathic species. We weren't isolated. We traded with several star systems before." Her voice trailed off. Trevor busied himself with checking their supplies to give her a moment of privacy with her memories. The shuttle was stocked with standard emergency rations, enough for one person for about 2 weeks, which meant they could share and have enough for their journey. "Are you hungry?" he asked, offering her a nutrition pack. Leia accepted it gratefully. The sustenance they provided in captivity was functional but joyless. They ate in companionable silence, the hum of the engines providing a soothing background noise. When Leia finally spoke again, her voice was soft, contemplative. "What made you do it, Trevor? Free me. You risked everything, your career, your freedom, possibly your life." Trevor considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. When I saw you in that chamber, when I heard your voice in my mind, something just felt profoundly wrong about the situation. I couldn't walk away." "You have a strong moral compass," Leia observed. "Or I'm incredibly impulsive," Trevor countered with a self-deprecating smile. "I'm still processing the fact that I threw away a stable career to become an interplanetary fugitive." "Do you regret it?" she asked, her sapphire eyes searching his. Trevor shook his head without hesitation. "No. Whatever happens next, I know I did the right thing." The journey to Lyra 9 was uneventful, allowing Leia time to recover her strength and Trevor time to plan their approach to the Nexus station. According to the information he'd gathered over the years, the station was hidden within the cavernous interior of Lyra 9's largest moon, a hollowed-out mining operation abandoned decades ago and repurposed as a haven for those who opposed corporate overreach in the galaxy. As they approached the Lyra system, Trevor activated the encrypted communication channel he'd been given years ago by a fellow engineer who had disappeared shortly afterward. Now he understood where she had likely gone. "Nexus Station. This is Hermes-class shuttle requesting docking clearance," he transmitted. "We carry precious cargo and seek sanctuary. Authorization code: Prometheus 793. There was a long pause before a gruff voice responded. "Shuttle identified. Maintain current trajectory. Prepare for guidance beam." A soft blue light enveloped their shuttle, guiding them toward what appeared to be a barren section of the moon's cratered surface. As they approached, a concealed hangar door slid open, revealing a cavern large enough to accommodate vessels many times their size. "Impressive," Leia murmured as Trevor piloted them inside. The hangar was a hive of activity, with vessels of various sizes and designs docked in organized sections. People of diverse species moved purposefully among the ships, carrying supplies or performing repairs. The atmosphere was utilitarian but vibrant, a stark contrast to the sterile, controlled environment of xenogenesis. As they landed, Trevor noticed a welcoming committee forming near their designated docking area, a burly, bearded human male, and a four-armed, shimmering-skinned being whose species Trevor didn't recognize. "Ready?" he asked Leia, who was regarding the gathering with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be to face a world I haven't seen in 14 years. They disembarked together, Trevor protectively close to Leia as they approached the waiting figures. "Welcome to Nexus Station," the bearded man greeted them, his voice matching the gruff one from the communication. "I'm Harker, Chief of Security. This is Pix, our intake coordinator." He gestured to the four-armed being beside him. Greetings and safe harboring to you both, Pix said, the translator device at their throat, converting their native language to standard galactic. We received word of a xenogenesis fugitive situation. I see it involves an Arcadian. Pix's multifaceted eyes studied Leia with evident surprise. We thought your kind extinct. Nearly so, Leia replied softly. As far as I know, I am the last. Harker's expression darkened. Another genocide for the corporate ledger. He turned to Trevor. You've taken a significant risk. Engineer. Xenogenesis doesn't look kindly on those who liberate their assets. I'm aware, Trevor replied. But I couldn't leave her there. Harker nodded approvingly. Then you'll fit right in at Nexus. Come, the Council will want to meet you both immediately. As they followed Harker and Pix through the station, Trevor was struck by the diverse population. Humans worked alongside beings from dozens of different worlds, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form. What united them, he realized, was a shared purpose, resistance against corporate domination of the galaxy. The Nexus station itself was a marvel of adaptive engineering. The natural caverns of the moon had been expanded and reinforced, with multiple levels connected by lifts and spiral staircases. Hydroponics gardens provided fresh air and food, while recycled water flowed through transparent conduits, serving both practical and aesthetic purposes. Most of our residents are refugees from corporate exploitation, Pix explained as they walked. Others are whistleblowers, former executives with consciences, or simply those who could no longer stomach the practices they witnessed. They were led to a chamber deep within the station, where 5 individuals sat around a circular table. The chamber was warm, illuminated by soft amber lighting that contrasted sharply with the cold blue illumination of xenogenesis facilities. The Council, Harker announced, gesturing for Trevor and Leia to approach. A stern-faced woman with close-cropped gray hair and sharp eyes rose to greet them. I am Eliza Kwan, Director of Nexus Operations, she said. With me are Jax, our Security Protocol Officer. She indicated a man with cybernetic eyes that whirred softly as they focused. Nar, our Data Specialist. A thin, pale individual with neural implants, visible at their temples, nodded. Krell, our Fabrication Expert. A beetle-like being clicked its mandibles in acknowledgement. And Dex, our Tactical Commander. A muscular individual with an elaborately scarred face inclined their heads silently. Trevor Grant, Trevor introduced himself, former life support systems engineer for Xenogenesis Corporation. Leia, said Leia simply, last known survivor of Arcadia. Kwan's expression softened slightly at Leia's introduction. Arcadia's destruction was one of the catalysts for the formation of Nexus. Your people deserved better than they received from the Galactic Mining Consortium and their Xenogenesis partners. We've received intelligence that Xenogenesis has deployed a significant portion of their security fleet to search for you both, Jax reported, his cybernetic eyes projecting a holographic star map showing the movement of vessels. They're particularly active along all major transit routes, within 5 jump points of Ares 7. They must be desperate to recover their investment, Nar observed, their voice carrying a synthetic undertone from their neural implants. I was their primary source of telepathic DNA, Leia explained. They've been trying to graft my abilities onto other species, creating biological weapons for corporate espionage and security. The Vexers, Trevor added. They're one of the results, shape-shifting entities with limited telepathic tracking abilities. Dex spoke for the first time, their voice unexpectedly melodious for their intimidating appearance. We've encountered Vexers before, dangerous, but not invincible. They can be confused by certain electromagnetic frequencies. Or by stronger telepathic signals, Leia added. Though it drains me considerably to influence them. Kwan leaned forward, her expression intense. What you've brought us, Leia, is more than your freedom. you've provided us with the opportunity to expose Xenogenesis's most egregious violations of Galactic Federation law: human experimentation, genocide, biological weapons development, all crimes that the Federation takes seriously, if presented with irrefutable evidence. Which we currently lack, Jax pointed out. We have testimonies, but corporations like Xenogenesis have armies of lawyers to discredit witnesses. What we need, Quan continued, is access to their secure data archives, specifically the unlocking code that would decrypt their most sensitive research files. Trevor frowned. Those would be stored in their most secure facility, the data center in orbit around Proxima 3. Precisely, Quan confirmed. And we believe that with your inside knowledge of Xenogenesis systems and Leia's unique abilities, we might have a chance to infiltrate the facility and extract the code. Trevor and Leia exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them, despite Leia not using her telepathic abilities. It would be dangerous, Trevor said. Extremely, Quan agreed. But if successful, it would provide the evidence needed for the Galactic Federation to act against Xenogenesis and potentially other corporations engaged in similar practices. When would this mission take place? Leia asked. We would need time to prepare, Dex answered. To study security protocols, create disguises, plot approach vectors, perhaps a week of intensive preparation. And if we succeed? Trevor pressed. What then? Then you both would be granted full citizenship and protection within Nexus, Quan promised. And more importantly, justice would be served for Leia's people and countless others who have suffered at the hands of corporate exploitation. Trevor looked to Leia, leaving the decision to her. After all, she had suffered the most at Xenogenesis's hands, and she would be taking the greatest risk by returning to their orbit. Leia stood straighter, her sapphire eyes gleaming with determination. I will do it, she declared. Not just for myself or my lost people, but for all those who might suffer a similar fate if Xenogenesis continues unchecked. Trevor placed his hand on her shoulder in support. Then I'm in too. We'll get that unlocking code together. The week that followed was a blur of intensive preparation. Each member of the Council contributed their expertise to prepare Trevor and Leia for the infiltration mission. Jax worked with Trevor to understand the latest security protocols at the Proxima 3 data center, using information provided by their network of informants within Xenogenesis. Together, they practiced bypassing similar systems in a simulation chamber. The main challenge will be the biometric scanners, Jax explained, as Trevor attempted to hack through a replicated security checkpoint. They're programmed to recognize not just fingerprints and retinal patterns, but also gait, heartbeat rhythms, and stress indicators. Can we spoof them? Trevor asked, fingers flying across the holographic interface. Not completely, Jax admitted. But we can create enough interference to give you a window of about 30 seconds before the system recognizes the anomaly. Meanwhile, Krell worked on creating a disguise for Leia. The beetle-like being's remarkable skill with biomimetic materials allowed them to design a skin overlay that would conceal Leia's distinctive red coloration. Not comfortable, but effective. Krell clicked, applying the synthetic skin to Leia's arm as a test. Will mask thermal signature too, important for avoiding vector detection. NAR provided them with detailed schematics of the data center, highlighting potential entry points and the likely location of the terminal containing the unlocking code. Level 47, Section C. They indicated on a three-dimensional projection. The most secure area, naturally. Limited access, constant surveillance. You'll have approximately 5 minutes once you're inside, before security protocols escalate to maximum. Dex focused on tactical training, teaching both Trevor and Leia basic combat maneuvers and evasion techniques. You won't win in a direct confrontation, the scarred warrior advised. Your advantage is surprise and speed. Get in, get the code, get out. If confronted, create distractions rather than engaging. Throughout the preparation, Trevor noticed Leia growing stronger daily. Her telepathic abilities, long suppressed by Xenogenesis's containment technology, were flourishing in freedom. She practiced focusing her abilities, learning to extend her influence with greater precision and control. During their brief rest periods, Trevor and Leia found themselves drawn to one another, sharing quiet moments in the hydroponics garden or the observation deck overlooking the moon's barren surface. "Do you ever dream of freedom?" Trevor asked her one evening as they watched the distant stars through the reinforced viewport. "Every day in that chamber," Leia replied softly. "But my dreams were limited. I couldn't imagine this." She gestured to the vast expanse of space before them. "I couldn't imagine meeting someone like you." Trevor felt a warmth spread through him at her words. "I'm nothing special. Just an engineer who stumbled into the right place at the wrong time." Leia turned to face him, her sapphire eyes intense. "No, Trevor. You're the one who saw injustice and acted when others turned away. That makes you extraordinary." Her hand found his, the touch sending an unexpected tingle up his arm. Despite their physiological differences, there was an undeniable connection between them, something that transcended species and circumstance. "I'm afraid for you," Trevor admitted. "Going back into Xenogenesis territory, if they capture you again." "They won't," Leia said with quiet certainty. "Either we succeed together, or—" She didn't complete the thought, but her meaning was clear. She would rather die than return to captivity. Trevor squeezed her hand gently. "It won't come to that, I promise." The night before the mission, the entire Nexus community gathered for a meal together, a tradition before high-risk operations. The cavern's main hall was filled with tables, where humans and aliens ate side by side, sharing food and conversation. The atmosphere was determinedly cheerful, though Trevor could sense the underlying tension. "To freedom and justice," Harker toasted, raising a cup of synthetic ale. The gathered crowd echoed his words, their diverse voices blending into a unified chorus. Later, as Trevor tried to sleep in his assigned quarters, a soft knock came at his door. He opened it to find Leia standing there, looking vulnerable in the dim corridor lighting. "I couldn't sleep," she explained. "Too many thoughts." Trevor invited her in, and they sat together on the edge of his bed, talking quietly about everything and nothing, their childhoods, favorite foods, the peculiarities of different planetary systems. It was a conversation that deliberately avoided tomorrow's dangers, focusing instead on the simple joy of connection. When Leia finally rose to leave, she paused at the door. "Whatever happens tomorrow, Trevor, thank you for giving me these days of freedom. They've meant everything." Before he could respond, she leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to his, a human gesture she must have observed or learned about. The kiss was brief, but charged with emotion, leaving Trevor speechless as she slipped away into the corridor. Morning came too quickly. The infiltration team gathered in the hangar where a nondescript maintenance shuttle waited. Krell applied Leia's disguise, the synthetic skin covering her red complexion with a pale human tone, while a cap concealed her white hair. "Remember," Quan instructed as they prepared to board. "The mission objective is the unlocking code only. No detours, no heroics, no revenge actions." She fixed Trevor with a stern gaze. "I know how tempting it can be to strike back when you've been wronged, but that's not why you're going." "Understood," Trevor assured her. In and out as quickly as possible. Jax handed them both small communication devices. "These will allow us to maintain contact without triggering Xenogenesis's signal detectors. Limited range, but secure." Dex would pilot the shuttle, with Nar accompanying them to handle any technical complications that might arise. The plan was simple in concept. Pose as a maintenance crew contracted to perform routine environmental system checks at the data center. Trevor's genuine Xenogenesis credentials, slightly modified by Nar's hacking skills, would provide their initial access. The journey to Proxima 3 was tense and largely silent. Each member of the team was focused on their role, mentally rehearsing procedures and contingencies. Trevor found his gaze repeatedly drawn to Leia, hardly recognizing her beneath the disguise, yet somehow still sensing her essential nature shining through. As they approached the Proxima 3 orbital space, Dex activated the shuttle's communication system. Proxima 3 Control. This is Maintenance Shuttle Helios requesting docking clearance. Contracted for environmental systems inspection. Authorization code Echo 97 Tango. There was a pause before the response came. Shuttle Helios. Transmit crew manifest and contract verification. NAR quickly sent the prepared documentation. Another tense pause followed. Shuttle Helios. You are cleared for docking at Maintenance Bay 12. Proceed on designated vector. Collective relief filled the shuttle cabin as Dex guided them toward the massive orbital structure that housed Xenogenesis's data center. The facility resembled a metallic spider, with the central hub containing the data cores and radiating arms housing support systems and docking bays. Remember, Dex said quietly as they approached, if anything goes wrong, make your way back to the shuttle. We'll wait as long as possible. But if security lockdown initiates, we may need to withdraw temporarily. Trevor and Leia nodded their understanding. The stakes were clear. If captured, rescue would be nearly impossible. The shuttle docked smoothly at the designated bay. Trevor and Leia, dressed in standard maintenance coveralls with Xenogenesis contractor badges, gathered their equipment, genuine maintenance tools concealing NAR's specialized hacking devices. Good luck, NAR said, their synthetic voice softer than usual. May the stars guide your path. Trevor and Leia disembarked, passing through the initial security checkpoint with relative ease. Trevor's modified credentials identified him as a returning contractor, while Leia was listed as a new trainee. Keep your head down, Trevor murmured as they walked through the sterile corridors. Security cameras everywhere. Leia gave an almost imperceptible nod, maintaining the subservient posture of a junior technician. They passed several Xenogenesis employees who barely glanced at them. Maintenance workers were virtually invisible in corporate environments. Following NAR's memorized schematics, they made their way toward the central hub, using service corridors and maintenance shafts to avoid the more heavily trafficked areas. As they approached Level 47, the security presence intensified. Armed guards at checkpoints, more frequent identity scans. At the final checkpoint before Section C, they were stopped by two guards in the distinctive black uniforms of Xenogenesis Elite Security. Identification and purpose, the first guard demanded, his hand resting casually on his weapon. Trevor presented his credentials. Environmental systems check. We've had reports of temperature fluctuations affecting the data cores. The guard examined the credentials carefully, then looked at Leia. Her too? Doesn't look like standard maintenance personnel. New trainee, Trevor explained smoothly. Corporate initiative to expand the technical workforce. She's observing today. The guard seemed skeptical, but waved them through after a final identity scan. As they walked away, Trevor could feel sweat beading on his forehead despite the facility's cool temperature. That was close, he whispered once they were out of earshot. It's about to get closer, Leia replied, her voice tight. I can sense them, Vexers. At least two, patrolling nearby. They quickened their pace, reaching the entrance to Section C, a reinforced door with a biometric scanner. Trevor placed his palm against it, holding his breath as the scanner processed his modified credentials. After an agonizing moment, the door slid open. They stepped through into a dimly lit circular chamber. The walls were lined with data terminals, each glowing with a soft blue light. At the center stood a single pedestal with a more elaborate interface, the primary access point for the secure data core. That's it, Trevor said, moving toward the central pedestal. Cover the door while I extract the code. Leia positioned herself near the entrance, extending her telepathic senses to monitor for approaching guards or Vexers. Meanwhile, Trevor connected Nar's hacking device to the terminal and began the process of bypassing the security protocols. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness as the device worked through layers of encryption. Trevor's hands hovered over the interface, ready to respond to any prompts or alarms. "Hurry," Leia urged, tension evident in her voice. "Someone's coming. Multiple someones." "Almost there," Trevor replied, watching as the final encryption layer dissolved. The screen flashed green, and a data crystal emerged from a slot in the pedestal. "Got it!" He grabbed the crystal containing the unlocking code, just as the door to Section C slid open. Standing in the doorway was a tall, lean man in an executive Xenogenesis uniform. His cold eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in recognition. "Engineer Grant," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "How unexpected to find you accessing our most secure data without authorization." His gaze shifted to Leia, seeming to see through her disguise. "And you've brought our most valuable asset back to us. How thoughtful." Behind him stood 4 armed guards and 2 Vexers, their metallic forms rippling with anticipation. "Director Vex," Trevor acknowledged, recognizing the man from company briefings. Vex was Xenogenesis's head of security, notorious for his ruthless efficiency. "Hand over the data crystal," Vex ordered, "and perhaps we'll allow you a quick death, rather than the extended one you've earned by stealing company property." He gestured toward Leia as he said, "property." Trevor clutched the crystal tightly. "She's not property. She's a person, the last survivor of a people your company helped destroy." "Touching sentimentality," Vex sneered, "but ultimately irrelevant. The Arcadian's genetic material is far too valuable to waste on philosophical debates about personhood." He signaled to his guards. "Take them. Kill him if necessary. But the Arcadian must be recovered intact." As the guards advanced, Trevor caught Leia's eye and gave a subtle nod. They had prepared for this possibility. Leia closed her eyes, summoning her telepathic strength. The air in the chamber seemed to vibrate as she projected a wave of primal terror directly into the minds of Vex and his security team. The guards collapsed instantly, overwhelmed by the sudden onslaught of fear. Even the Vexers recoiled, their fluid forms convulsing in distress. Vex himself remained standing longer than the others, his face contorted in a battle against the telepathic assault. "What are you doing to me?" he gasped, dropping to his knees. "Showing you how it feels to be helpless," Leia answered, her disguised face intense with concentration. "To be at the mercy of something you don't understand." Vex finally succumbed, falling forward onto the floor, his body trembling uncontrollably. "Come on," Trevor urged, taking Leia's arm. She was visibly drained from the effort, her disguise beginning to deteriorate around the edges as her concentration faltered. "We need to move before reinforcements arrive." They ran from the chamber, Trevor supporting Leia as they navigated back through the service corridors. Behind them, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. "Security breach, level 47. All personnel initiate lockdown procedures." Trevor activated his communication device. "Dex, Nar, we have the code, but we've been compromised. Heading back to the shuttle now. Be ready for immediate departure." "Acknowledged," came Dex's terse reply. "Security forces converging on the docking bays. Hurry." They encountered scattered resistance as they made their way back. Individual guards who were quickly overwhelmed by Leia's fading telepathic abilities, or Trevor's newfound combat skills. The strain was taking its toll on Leia. However, by the time they reached the docking level, she was struggling to maintain her disguise and her consciousness. "Stay with me," Trevor urged, as they ran the final stretch toward Maintenance Bay 12. "We're almost there." The shuttle was waiting, engines already humming with pre-launch preparations. Nar stood at the open hatch, waving them urgently forward. Just as they reached the shuttle, Two Vexers appeared at the far end of the docking bay, moving with frightening speed toward them. "Get aboard!" Trevor shouted, pushing Leia toward Nar's waiting arms. He turned to face the approaching Vexers, buying time for Leia to board safely. The Vexers split up, attempting to flank him. Their liquid metal forms elongated into spear-like appendages as they prepared to strike. Trevor dodged the first attack, rolling beneath a maintenance vehicle for cover. Inside the shuttle, Leia refused Nar's attempts to secure her in a seat. "Trevor's still out there," she protested weakly. "Dex is going to help him," Nar assured her. "But you must conserve your strength." Outside, Trevor was running out of options. The Vexers had him cornered against a fuel container, their metallic bodies reforming for another attack. Suddenly, Dex appeared from the shuttle's hatch, wielding what looked like a modified energy distributor. "Down!" Dex shouted. Trevor dropped to the floor as Dex activated the device. A wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed across the docking bay. The Vexers convulsed violently, their forms temporarily destabilizing into puddles of inert metal. "It won't hold them long," Dex warned, pulling Trevor to his feet. "Move!" They sprinted back to the shuttle, the hatch sealing behind them as soon as they were aboard. Dex immediately took the controls, initiating emergency launch procedures. "Hang on," the tactical commander advised grimly. "This won't be a smooth exit." The shuttle tore away from the docking clamps, structural warnings blaring as the hasty departure damaged both the vessel and the docking bay. Outside, security vessels were already mobilizing to intercept them. Leia, despite her exhaustion, moved to join Trevor at the viewport. "They're coming," she observed as three Xenogenesis pursuit craft detached from the station and accelerated toward them. "We can't outrun those," Nar stated, examining the tactical display. "Not in this shuttle." Trevor noticed something on the scanner, a flickering anomaly at the edge of the Proxima system. "What's that?" he asked, pointing. Dex smiled grimly. "That, Engineer Grant, is the border of Galactic Federation space. Xenogenesis vessels are prohibited from entering without specific diplomatic clearance." "Can we reach it before they reach us?" Leia asked. "It'll be close," Dex admitted, pushing the shuttle's engines beyond recommended parameters. The pursuit craft were gaining rapidly, their weapon systems coming online as they closed the distance. The first energy blast struck the shuttle's rear shields, causing the entire vessel to shudder. "Shields at 60%, Nar reported. "Another direct hit and we'll lose propulsion." Trevor looked to Leia, seeing determination replace exhaustion in her eyes. "I have an idea," she said, "but I'll need your help." She explained quickly, a desperate plan, but possibly their only chance. Trevor nodded his agreement, moving to adjust the shuttle's power distribution as Leia had requested. "Diverting all non-essential power to the engines," he announced, "including life support reserve." "Are you certain?" Dex questioned, understanding the risk they were taking. "Do it," Leia confirmed. The shuttle surged forward with renewed speed as Trevor channeled every available watt of power to the engines. Meanwhile, Leia positioned herself at the rear viewport, focusing her remaining telepathic strength on the pursuing vessels. What happened next astonished everyone aboard. A visible wave of energy emanated from Leia, not directed at the pilots' minds this time, but at the ships themselves. The lead pursuit craft suddenly veered wildly off course, colliding with its companion. Both vessels spiraled away, their pilots struggling to regain control. The third craft continued its pursuit, firing another blast that grazed the shuttle's hull. Alarms blared as systems began to fail. "Engine damage!" Nar shouted over the noise. "Losing power!" "We're not going to make it," Dex realized, watching as the border to Federation space remained tantalizingly out of reach. Leia, nearly collapsing from the effort, gathered her final reserves of strength. "Yes, we will," she whispered. She released a final telepathic pulse, more powerful than any she had demonstrated before. The pursuing craft was hit by what appeared to be a solid wall of energy, sending it tumbling backward as if struck by an invisible fist. In the same moment, their shuttle's engines failed completely. They drifted forward on momentum alone, watching as the border indicators on their scanner grew closer. "Come on," Trevor urged, as if his words could push them the final distance. The shuttle crossed the border just as the last pursuit craft regained control and approached the boundary. It hovered there, unable to follow without risking an interstellar diplomatic incident. Inside the shuttle, emergency systems had engaged, providing minimal life support as they drifted deeper into Federation space. Trevor rushed to Leia's side. She had collapsed to the floor, the synthetic disguise completely deteriorated, revealing her natural crimson skin beneath. "Leia!" he called anxiously, cradling her head. "Leia, can you hear me?" Her sapphire eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on his face. "Did we make it?" she whispered. "We did," he confirmed, smiling despite his concern. "We're in Federation space. We're safe." A weak smile touched her lips before her eyes closed again. Not in death, but in the deep exhaustion of telepathic overexertion. "She needs medical attention," Nar observed. "And our shuttle needs repairs before we can return to Nexus. I'm sending a distress signal on Federation emergency channels," Dex reported. "Given our cargo and the information we carry, I believe they'll respond quickly." True to Dex's prediction, a Federation patrol vessel intercepted them within hours. The Federation officers were initially suspicious, but became more receptive when Trevor presented the data crystal containing the unlocking code and explained its significance. "This contains evidence of corporate crimes against sentient beings," he told the Federation captain, "including the near extinction of an entire species." The captain, a stern woman with the insignia of the Federation Judicial Corps, examined the crystal carefully. "If your claims are verified, this will trigger a full investigation into Xenogenesis Corporation. In the meantime, we'll provide medical assistance for your Arcadian companion and transport to the nearest Federation outpost." Leia was taken to the patrol vessel's medical bay, where advanced regeneration technology helped restore her depleted energy. Trevor refused to leave her side, maintaining a vigil as she slowly recovered. When she finally awakened fully, 2 days later, her first sight was Trevor asleep in a chair beside her bed, his hand still holding hers. "Hey," she said softly, squeezing his hand. Trevor jolted awake, relief flooding his features. "Hey, yourself. How do you feel?" "Like I pushed my abilities further than ever before," she admitted. "But stronger for having done so." She looked around at the unfamiliar surroundings. "Federation vessel?" Trevor nodded. "They're taking us to Corvus Prime, the Federation's judicial headquarters. The data crystal is being analyzed as we speak." 6 months later, Trevor and Leia stood on a balcony overlooking the vast judicial complex on Corvus Prime's orbital station. The setting sun bathed the structure in a reddish glow reminiscent of Leia's natural skin tone. The trial of Xenogenesis Corporation's leadership had concluded that morning with a decisive verdict: guilty on all counts. The evidence provided by the unlocking code had been damning: detailed records of the destruction of Arcadia, the capture and exploitation of Leia, and numerous other atrocities committed in the name of scientific advancement and corporate profit. "It doesn't bring your people back," Trevor said softly, watching Leia's profile as she gazed at the sunset. "But it's justice of a sort. More than I ever expected to see," she acknowledged. "And there's more." She turned to him, excitement lighting her sapphire eyes. "The Federation scientists discovered something in the Xenogenesis files, a complete DNA library from Arcadia, preserved in their Proxima 3 facility. They believe it might be possible to restore my species, or at least prevent their complete extinction." Trevor's heart swelled with happiness for her. "That's incredible news." "It's a beginning," Leia agreed. "A chance for my people's legacy to continue, even if altered from its original form. The past months had brought other changes as well. Leia had been granted full Federation citizenship and protection. Trevor had been offered a position on the Federation's Ethics in Engineering Commission, using his experience to help develop regulations preventing similar corporate abuses in the future. And their relationship had deepened, transcending the initial bond of rescuer and rescued to become something profound and equal. "What will you do now?" Trevor asked. Though he already knew her answer, they had discussed their future extensively. "I'll work with the Federation scientists on the Arcadian Restoration Project," she replied, "and continue developing my telepathic abilities to help others." She turned to face him fully. "But, most importantly, I'll build a life, something I never thought possible during those years in containment." Trevor took her hands in his, still marveling at how natural it felt despite their physiological differences. "Together?" "Together," she confirmed, leaning forward to press her forehead against his, in the traditional Arcadian gesture of affection she had taught him. "We may come from different worlds, Trevor, but our future is shared." As they stood watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Trevor reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a cold laboratory on Ares 7 to this moment of triumph and possibility. What had begun with a simple act of compassion had transformed into something world-changing, perhaps even galaxy-changing. And in the end, wasn't that the most profound truth? That a single choice made from the heart could ripple outward, affecting countless lives across the stars? That one person, seeing injustice and choosing to act, could set in motion events that brought down the mighty and lifted up the oppressed. "What are you thinking about?" Leia asked, sensing his contemplative mood without using her telepathic abilities. "About choices," Trevor replied, "and how the right one, even when difficult, is always worth making." Leia smiled, understanding completely. "Open the door, human," she quoted softly, echoing her first words to him. "Free me." "The best decision I ever made," Trevor said, and sealed the sentiment with a kiss as the first stars of evening twinkled into view, heralding a new dawn for them both, and perhaps for an entire species reborn from the ashes of corporate greed.